There it is. Time for a new anvil top review. But this is going to be more than just anvil top. I'm going to be taking this thing out and putting it through a pretty rigorous test. So I'll tell you what it is. This is the 8-inch survival hunting knife from Harbor Freight. I forget if it's, I think it was either $8 or $9. I have the receipt here somewhere. We'll call it $8. Might have been $8.49 or something like that. This is sort of the classic Rambo style, whatever, survival knife thing that kind of everybody knows is probably a total piece of junk. But it's interesting, it's got a little, it actually has a little survival kit in there. I'll give it an honest shakedown. I mean, we'll see if it's, worth $8. I'm assuming it's going to be hard to open as they usually are. But fortunately, I have my trusty everyday carry disc and bowl can. So we're gonna see how this works. There. So first impressions, I gotta be honest, that sheath is actually much nicer than I expected. That appears to be, well, you know, it's nylon. It's got a little blemish right there. But, you know, I'm not saying I would use this necessarily. That strap looks a little flimsy, but it doesn't fit real well. But I think it's actually a durable nylon. It feels like it has some backing of some kind. It's got some thickness to it. That's kind of interesting. So it's a little bit better than ooh, oh, look at that. They got some, looks like they have some grease of some kind on there. Well, that's interesting. So I suppose that's just to, you know, protect it as it comes from the factory and gets transported across the world from wherever in China or Southeast Asia somewhere. Wherever they make these things. It's cool. We'll get into that in a minute. So I guess I'm going to assume that oil that's on there isn't meant to stay. So I'm going to grab something quick. That's a very interesting style of, I don't know if you'd call it a saw blade on the back. Yeah, I guess it is. I will definitely be trying that out when we get out to the woods here. It's got a hollow grind. Not surprising. If I had to guess, I'd say they probably just run it back and forth. I mean, I'm guessing it's automated, but they probably just run it back and forth on a wheel. And that hollow grind is probably just radius of that wheel. It looks like it's sharpened on the back here, but it's not. It's kind of a false edge. But that's good. It's fine with me. I have no idea what kind of steel this is. There's no manual or anything with this. All that it really tells us basically nothing on the front except that it's an 8-inch survival knife. Roll it over to the back and we've got lightweight aluminum handle, precision sharpened 8-inch stainless steel blade. So they're claiming at least that it's stainless steel. Includes sewing kit, safety pin, buttons, fishing line with hook, matches with flint paper, compass, and carrying sheath. Well, I'll tell you right now, I'm probably not going to be doing any fishing with this. Probably not doing any sewing. But we'll take those things out and have a look at them. And aluminum handle. You know, I will say it's very lightweight. I'm not sure that lightweight is a big advantage for this kind of knife. But it's, you know, it definitely, if that's something you're looking for, there's no question this is a lightweight knife for its size. See if I can figure out where the balance point is on this. I mean, Well, not too bad, especially for a real lightweight handle. I guess before we get out to the woods, I'll test out a couple of things. It seems to be pointing more or less north, so that's interesting. Got a compass in there that points north. Make sure we have everything they said we'd get. A little fish hook there. Got some thread. Oh, that is a tiny little safety pin. Some thread, couple of buttons. You know, you'd hate to lose your buttons when you're out in the wilderness trying to survive. So anyway, that's kind of cool. Is there anything else in there? I think that was it. I thought there was supposed to be a striking surface. Oh, that's in here. We'll do the cutting through paper test. I don't have any paper real handy, but we got this cardboard here. It's not. Yeah, that may not be the sharpest thing ever. Here we go. Here's an old scrap piece of paper. It definitely doesn't come from the factory with a razor sharp edge. Boy, yeah, that's not much of an advertisement there. Wasn't really expecting perfection out of this knife anyway. All right, time to take this thing to the woods. And here we are. First thing I'm going to do is pull out these contents. And again, I'm going to check on that compass. Okay, now you're going to have to take my word for it here, but I can tell you that north is very much in the direction that compass is pointing right now. That is kind of amazing. Unfortunately, we have some really serious fire restrictions going on where I live right now. So, although I would like to be able to prove this kit by actually starting a fire, what I'm going to have to do is just strike a couple of matches and make sure they work. I can tell you that it didn't quite draw blood, but I can tell you the fishing hook is sharp. It's kind of a cool deal. I think I'll just kind of stick that right there for now. There's our fishing line to go with that fishing hook. Interesting. There's our striking surface for our matches. We'll test a couple of them. No trouble at all right there. Maybe we'll do one of those in slow motion, huh? So I'm pretty satisfied with those matches. Still got a couple left in case I need them. No trouble striking at all, so we'll go on with the test here. I don't know how clear that is, but it's got a little O-ring there. So at least in theory, that would keep water out. That's kind of a nice feature. Might put that to the test later. And I noticed something funny here. There's a little Allen screw right there. Make sure we're in focus here. There's a little Allen screw right there. So I'm guessing you can remove this from the blade without damage. It's the only thing I can imagine that would be for. If you loosen that up, maybe the blade comes out, so we might try that. We might try that later. I think it's time to test our saw blade. I mean, I'm assuming that's what that's for. It's got kind of an odd style to it, but I think it might actually work. I'm gonna try it out. Seems like it works pretty well. Yeah, we're running into a little trouble, and I can see why. We're getting a little binding, and that's because these teeth don't actually stick out. These teeth here don't actually stick out past the sides of the blade. So as we get deeper into the wood, and this is some pretty dry, dead wood going on here. As we get deeper in, it starts to bind. So I'll try a little chopping with it. It's not a real heavy knife, but I think it'll chop a little. Now, I gotta tell you, that's a pretty tough piece of cedar right there. I would say, you know, the edge wasn't real sharp to begin with, but it's actually held up pretty well. I'm gonna give it a few more whacks. Oh, I thought I had a little ding in the blade there, but I actually don't. Wow, that's actually held an edge pretty well. Like I said, it wasn't real sharp to begin with. I mean, you're not going to shave with this thing, but it doesn't seem to be damaged along that edge. That might be some halfway decent steel. Time to do a little splitting, I guess. I'm just kind of looking around for stuff that I can find that is splittable. There we go. And I'll tell you this, when you get a permit to cut, you're only supposed to cut the dead wood that's laying on the ground. And a lot of this stuff will just collect sand because you get wind comes up during the dry seasons. You'll get wind coming up, and these old dry pieces will collect a lot of sand in them. So I'm not really expecting the knife to stay sharp in this type of environment, but as long as it can stand up to a little abuse. All right, we're gonna have to baton a little bit here. This should be a real test of this poor knife because we obviously don't have a full tang or anything. See if that loosened up at all. Doesn't seem to have loosened up. I don't think I mentioned it before, but this knife really does have a pretty good lockup right here with the handle. So that's pretty good. Let's see if I can do a little more of that batoning. Went through there pretty good. All right, batoning test here. Pretty good. I think there was even a knot in there. Look at that. Oh man, wish you could smell that. Fresh cedar, nothing like it. Have to say I'm pretty impressed. The blade is actually heating up from the friction of that, and it hasn't loosened up at all. So maybe that little set screw right there, that little set screw is really doing the trick, holding it in place. It'll be interesting to get this apart and see how it's built in there. I am by no means an expert at throwing knives, but that's what we're doing in the next test. That failure was no surprise. Well, this should be interesting. Wow. I don't have that kind of success very often. Let me try that from another angle. Still no damage. All right, so what do I say about this? Well, I'm surprised. It has loosened up a little, but not a whole lot. I think that this set screw here, I found the right Allen wrench for it and kind of loosened it up. I think that screw actually is there to help put some tension on the blade. But the interesting thing is when you pull it out, it's still just about as tight or loose as it was before. So I'm not sure what to say about that. I will say this though, I still really kind of despise this knife. I don't like the way it looks. I don't really like what it represents. I'm a big fan of the full tang blade at a minimum. But for the type of knife that it is, I was expecting much, much lower quality. And it's hard for me to even say those words because looking at it, I mean, fit and finish isn't great. And it has a feel to it that it just doesn't instill confidence. But with that said, I took it out to the woods and I put it through a certain amount, you know, a fair amount of abuse. I probably threw it 40 or 50 times to get the shots that you saw. I used it practically like a hatchet, trying to hack through wood with it. I used it to split wood, as you saw. I was batoning it. I was hitting it pretty hard. I wasn't holding back. And so far, we don't even really have any damage to it. There aren't any chips missing from the blade. It might be just a little bit dull in through here. I mean, if this is a knife that appeals to you, and to be honest, it is not to me. But if this is a knife that appeals to you, if this is a design that you think you would like, I guess this wouldn't really be a bad choice, especially not for $8 or $9. I'm just a little surprised to be saying that right now. For $8, you could definitely do a lot worse than this knife. And like I said, there are no specs at all on the steel. It's just called stainless steel. It seems to be hard enough, but it's also tough. I mean, it didn't chip out, it didn't ding, it didn't chip. So ugly as it may be, at least in my opinion, it actually functioned pretty well. One more thing, I am going to take this apart because I want to see how far. I can kind of see looking in here that the tang maybe only comes back, comes in about that far. But I really want to get a sense of what this looks like in here. So I am going to cut it apart. If I have to cut it, I'm going to try a couple other things first. And then I'll roll that footage in too. What I did is I just put a punch in there and whacked it a couple times with the hammer, and that loosened it up enough that I can take it out of there. So I'm glad that worked out. I didn't want to have to damage this to make that happen. And I was hoping that once I got that out of there, there might be some markings to indicate what type of steel this is, but there really is nothing there. I gotta say though, looking at this is kind of giving me an idea for another project, but we'll see how that goes. And that about does it for this video. Thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed the video, hit subscribe and leave a comment, give me a like, it all helps. And I will see you in the next video. And maybe we'll be doing something with this. We'll see.